The Vox transmission began as static, the kind no one bothered to log anymore. On a forgotten listening post at the edge of the segmentum solar, a junior adept nearly muted it out of habit. Then the screaming cut through the noise, raw, hoarse, stripped of sanity. The voice was male, Imperial Guard by accent and code phrasing, but it no longer sounded human. It sounded like something being hollowed out while still alive. "This is Lieutenant Havel of the 203rd Vardosian," the man gasped between bursts of gunfire and distant metallic impacts. "We are overrun. No, negative, correcting that. There is no enemy force. There is no army. Throne preserve us. It's not a war." The transmission dissolved into coughing, wet and choking, before the voice returned, quieter now, almost reverent in its terror. "It's one man." The adept froze. In the background of the Vox feed came the unmistakable sound of chain blades screaming, not in chaotic bursts, but in steady, deliberate rhythm. Each rev was followed by a sound that defied classification. Armor splitting, bones snapping, something heavy collapsing into meat. There were no battle hymns, no war cries, no orders being shouted. Only the chain blade, only the screams. The feed cut out seconds later, not with static, but with silence. A perfect, suffocating silence, as if the world on the other end had simply stopped existing. Within hours, similar reports flooded in from systems light years apart. Administratum clerks noticed the pattern first, though none dared say it aloud. Entire worlds were going dark without warning. Not slowly, not with the usual signs of rebellion or invasion. No astropathic distress calls, no orbital engagements, no mass fleet movements. Just silence. When reconnaissance vessels arrived days or weeks later, they found planets still intact from orbit, cities standing, spires unbroken, void shields inactive. But when landing parties descended, they found no resistance. They found no life. Hive cities were discovered filled with corpses frozen in poses of terror. Thousands lay where they had stood, weapons unfired, armor untouched, faces locked in expressions of disbelief. There were no signs of prolonged combat, no barricades, no last stands, only blood. So much blood that it flowed down Hab streets like rainwater, pooling at the base of statues and clogging drainage systems that had once served billions. In some places, messages had been written in it, simple marks, crude sigils, smeared by gauntleted hands that did not care to be precise. Imperial investigators, hardened men and women who had witnessed demon worlds and tyrannid harvests, found themselves vomiting inside their rebreathers. The air itself felt wrong, thick with iron and ozone, as if reality had been bruised. Auspex scans detected no warp rifts, no lingering demonic presence. This was not a chaos incursion in the traditional sense. There was no corruption spreading outward. There was only absence, a void where life had been methodically erased. On one shrine world, the bodies were arranged.
Pilgrims knelt in endless rows before the grand basilica, skulls bowed, hands clasped in eternal prayer. They had been placed there after death, armorless, unarmed, their blood used to redraw the imperial aquila across the plaza, broken, split down the center. At the foot of the cathedral steps lay the corpses of the Planetary Defense Force, stacked neatly, weapons cleaned and placed beside them as if returned in mockery. Inside the basilica, priests were nailed to the walls with fragments of their own reliquaries, mouths forced open, tongues torn out. The bells still rang when the wind passed through the shattered towers, tolling endlessly for a congregation that would never answer. The Inquisition took notice when a Space Marine chapter failed to respond. The Crimson Halberds had been dispatched to investigate the Shrine World after astropathic contact ceased. Their battle barge translated into orbit, broadcast standard challenge codes, and received no reply. Boarding torpedoes were prepared, drop pods were armed. The barge never launched them. Hours later, it was found drifting, power levels stable, systems intact. Its crew, Astartes and serfs alike, were dead, every one of them. Their gene seed had been removed with surgical precision. The walls of the armory bore a single mark, gouged deep into adamantium by something that did not slow down. A name began to circulate in sealed chambers and encrypted data vaults. It was spoken reluctantly, like a curse that gained power through utterance. A relic of the heresy, a monster the Imperium had long believed it understood, catalogued, contained. Khârn the Betrayer. But this was not the Khârn of old battle reports. This was not a berserker leading frothing warbands into glorious slaughter. There were no banners, no skull piles raised in worship, no prayers to dark gods echoing across the void. Whatever moved through the Imperium now did not conquer, it did not claim. It passed through worlds like a blade through flesh, clean, unstoppable, indifferent to what it destroyed so long as it kept moving. Astropaths began dying before transmissions could be sent, not screaming, not burning out as usual, but collapsing mid-sentence, eyes bleeding, mouths frozen open as if they had glimpsed something that erased thought itself. Navigators reported shadows moving against the light of the Astronomicon, not blocking it, but cutting across it like a scar. Even the warp seemed to recoil, currents bending away from an approaching presence that did not belong to any realm, material or immaterial. In the depths of the Imperial Palace, far from the bloodshed, data slates stacked high with casualty estimates that no one could verify. Numbers lost meaning. Millions, billions, whole sectors marked with a single sigil indicating status unknown. High Lords argued, demanded explanations, called for crusades that never launched. Every plan assumed an enemy that could be targeted, delayed, reasoned with, or overwhelmed. None of those assumptions applied here, because there was no front line, no pattern, no warning, only reports that ended the same way. It's not a war, the voices always said when they had time to say anything at all. It's one man. And somewhere beyond the imperial borders, beyond fear and faith and reason, Khârn the Betrayer walked forward through the stars, gore-child heavy in his hands, his armor soaked black with drying blood, his mind horrifyingly clear. He did not hurry, he did not rage, he simply moved, world to world, system to system, leaving behind a trail of silence so complete that even history struggled to remember what had been erased. The Imperium had faced gods, it had faced demons, it had faced extinction, but it had never faced this, and it was only the beginning. Before the Imperium learned to fear the silence he left behind, before worlds vanished without invasion fleets or warning, Khârn had been something dangerously rare in the age of the Great Crusade. He had been a believer, not in gods, not in destiny, but in brotherhood. He was the equerry of Angron, the eater of worlds, the Red Angel himself. And in those distant days, Khârn stood not as a butcher, but as a bridge between a broken Primarch and a legion that did not yet understand the depth of its own damnation. Where Angron was rage incarnate, a storm of pain barely contained by flesh and iron, Khârn was clarity. He spoke when Angron could not. He listened when Angron would only roar. He carried the burden of command so that his Primarch did not have to bear it alone. The World Eaters were already cursed long before the galaxy would learn their name. The butcher's nails hammered into their minds drove them toward violence, stripping away restraint, drowning thought beneath endless fury. Many succumbed completely, becoming little more than living weapons. Khârn did not. He endured. He learned to ride the nails rather than be consumed by them, mastering their pain, shaping it into focus. Where others screamed, Khârn planned. Where others slaughtered indiscriminately, Khârn chose his targets. He believed, truly believed, that Angron could be saved, not from war, but from meaninglessness, that the Legion could be more than a tidal wave of blood. That belief died slowly. It died with every order ignored by the wider Imperium, every compliance that treated Angron as a tool rather than a brother, every time the Emperor looked upon his broken son and chose conquest over healing. Khârn watched as Angron was unleashed again and again, never mended, never understood, only aimed like a blade and discarded when dull. He felt the Legion fracture beneath the weight of endless violence, discipline eroding with every campaign. Still he endured, still he believed loyalty could anchor them. Then came Scalathrax. The night the World Eaters froze to death beneath a dead sky was the night Khârn stopped believing in salvation. Trapped on a frozen world, their warbands scattered, morale shattered, discipline gone, the Legion turned on itself. Brothers slaughtered brothers for warmth, for spite, for nothing at all. Angron was gone, lost to the warp, leaving behind only his shadow. Commanders hesitated, captains argued, the Legion ate itself alive. Khârn ended the debate with Gorechild. He walked through the camps, igniting fires, not for warmth, but to expose cowards. He butchered those who hesitated, those who hid, those who clung to the idea that survival without honor was acceptable. He killed not in rage, but in judgment. When dawn came, the snow was black with ash and blood, and the World Eaters that remained understood the truth. There would be no unity, no redemption, only war, endless and absolute. From that moment on, Khârn the Betrayer was born, not because he betrayed the Imperium, nor even his Legion, but because he betrayed the idea that loyalty required mercy. What the Imperium never understood, even after 10,000 years of bloodshed, was that Khârn was never insane. He was never lost to the nails as others were. His mind did not fracture, it hardened. The rage that drove him was not blind fury, but a cold, disciplined certainty. He knew exactly what he was doing every time Gorechild fell. He remembered every face. He chose every kill. He was not running from pain, he was weaponizing it. That was what made him terrifying. As centuries passed, Khârn became a legend even among the traitor legions. He appeared on battlefields without warning, slew champions, shattered formations, and vanished again. He led assaults, then abandoned them. He fought beside warbands, then turned on them without explanation. Demons whispered his name with reverence and fear. Champions of Khârn sought his blessing and found only death. The blood god watched him closely, not as a favored son, but as something more dangerous, something that did not kneel. Because Khârn did not fight for Khârn, he fought because stopping meant confronting everything he had lost. In the rare moments between battles, when the nails screamed less loudly, fragments of memory surfaced like shards of broken glass. Angron as he once was, before the arena pits, before the chains. The Legion standing in disciplined ranks, red armor unscarred by centuries of slaughter. Brotherhood, purpose, hope. Each memory was a wound, and Khârn learned the only way to cauterize it was through violence. The galaxy had taken everything from him. He would take everything from it in return. That was the truth the Imperium failed to grasp as reports of the unstoppable massacre spread.
This was not a berserker unleashed. This was a man who had reached the end of meaning and decided that nothing deserved to survive the journey with him. His silence was not emptiness, it was resolve. His refusal to preach, to boast, to declare allegiance was not apathy, it was contempt. Khârn did not want worship. He did not want victory. He did not want an ending. He wanted motion. Every world he walked across became another step forward, another excuse not to stop, not to think, not to remember. The Imperium saw only the bloodshed, the impossible kill counts, the horror left in his wake. They did not see the deeper truth that each corpse was a distraction, each massacre a way to outrun the echo of Angron's suffering that followed him like a shadow through the warp. And now, 10,000 years after the heresy, something had changed. The reports no longer described Khârn arriving amidst armies or great wars. He came alone. He left alone. No banners flew, no war cries echoed. The nails still drove him, but their rhythm had slowed, synchronized with something deeper. Purpose had replaced frenzy. Precision had replaced excess. This was not the betrayer lashing out at the galaxy. This was Khârn moving forward with terrifying intent. Whatever line he had crossed, whatever final restraint had broken, it had stripped away even the thin chaos of the blood god's influence. What walked through the Imperium now was not a champion, it was a conclusion. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand what that meant.
The first world to fall after the pattern revealed itself was not a fortress, nor a hive of military significance. It was a trade world, unremarkable, compliant, its greatest crime being its usefulness to the Imperium. Cargo haulers moved in constant procession between its orbital docks and surface ports, carrying grain, promethium, and the endless mundane necessities of survival. When contact was lost, the administratum assumed delay, corruption, or simple bureaucratic failure. By the time a patrol cruiser was dispatched, the world had already died. The ship's landing parties reported silence so absolute it pressed against the ears. The wind moved through empty streets, lifting scraps of parchment and discarded clothing, but no engines ran, no vox chatter echoed, no alarms sounded. Power still flowed to most districts, lights flickering uselessly over streets painted dark with old blood. The bodies lay where people had fallen, mid-step, mid-word, mid-prayer. There had been no evacuation, no attempt at resistance. Whatever had come for them had moved too fast, struck too decisively for panic to organize itself into action. Auspex scans detected no mass weapon discharges, no orbital strikes, no signs of bombardment. There were no craters, no collapsed hab blocks, just a world that had stopped living. In the central manufacturum district, investigators found the first clue that this was something new. Security footage, recovered from hardened cogitators, showed a single armored figure entering the frame. He did not run. He did not take cover. Autocannon fire stitched across his chest and shoulders, sparking uselessly from armor already blackened by old blood. He walked forward through it, Gorechild rising and falling in a steady, methodical rhythm. Each swing ended a life. Each step brought him closer. The footage ended when the camera was torn from the wall. Within days, similar worlds followed. Agriplanets, shrine worlds, frontier colonies, targets chosen not for strategic value, but for accessibility. Khârn did not challenge the Imperium's strength. He tested its assumptions. Every doctrine assumed time. Time to mobilize, time to warn, time to reinforce. He allowed none of it. He appeared at the edge of systems aboard vessels that did not broadcast, did not signal, and sometimes did not survive the journey. He did not care. If the ship burned out in the warp after delivering him, so be it. He would find another. Astropaths began reporting something new just before their deaths, a pressure, a presence approaching not from the warp, but through it, like a blade sliding between layers of reality. Some managed to transmit fragments before collapsing, their minds flayed by proximity to something that did not belong. They spoke of chains dragging across thought, of a roaring silence that drowned out the Astronomicon itself. Then they died, leaving their worlds blind and deaf. On the surface, the killings followed no discernible pattern, yet veterans of the Inquisition began to notice the truth too late. Khârn struck infrastructure first, not strategically, but psychologically. Vox relays were destroyed by hand, power stations were severed with brutal efficiency, command centers were erased before a single order could be issued. The population did not flee because they did not know they were under attack until he was already among them. By the time the screams began, escape routes were clogged with bodies. Witnesses who survived long enough to be interrogated told the same story, regardless of world or culture. He did not shout. He did not roar praise to dark gods. He did not slow down to savor the killing. He moved like inevitability, his armor soaked so thoroughly that fresh blood barely changed its color. Gorechild screamed constantly, its chain teeth chewing through flesh, bone, ceramite, and plasteel with equal contempt. When the weapon stalled, he restarted it without looking, without hesitation, never breaking stride. Imperial Guard units deployed against him ceased to function as military formations within minutes. Officers were killed first, often before they realized he was present. Vox operators were next, throats crushed, skulls caved in. Heavy weapons teams emptied magazines into him, watching in disbelief as he closed the distance regardless. Those who ran were not chased. Those who stood were butchered. The survivors, few and broken, carried the same message off-world. Fighting him felt less like battle and more like being erased.
Space Marines arrived on the third world to fall after the pattern emerged. A full strike force of Ultramarines veterans deployed with precision, discipline, and confidence earned across centuries of war. They located him within hours, surrounded him in the ruins of a manufactorum city, and executed a textbook containment maneuver. Bolter fire thundered, plasma burned the air, power swords crackled as they closed in. Khârn killed them anyway. He did not meet them head-on. He broke through them. He targeted their sergeants, their champions, their symbols of order. Gorechild tore through ceramite like wet parchment. He took wounds that would have killed Lesser Astartes 10 times over and ignored them completely. When it was over, the Ultramarines lay scattered across the ruins, their gene seed ripped from shattered bodies, their banners torn and trampled into the blood-soaked ground. Khârn left without acknowledging them, as if they had never mattered. Word spread quickly after that. Chapters rerouted patrols. Strike forces withdrew rather than engage. The Black Templars, zealots of righteous fury, charged him in the ruins of a cathedral city and were annihilated in minutes. Their last transmission was not a prayer, but confusion. "He is not slowing," the Castellan reported, his voice cracking as Gorechild screamed closer. "He is not—" The feed ended abruptly. The horror was not merely in the death toll. It was in the realization spreading through the Imperium that Khârn was not reacting to resistance. He was not adapting. He was not escalating. He was simply continuing. The same pace, the same method, world after world, each massacre indistinguishable from the last, except in scale. There was no climax to interrupt, no lull to exploit, no sign that exhaustion, injury, or opposition mattered. Warp storms began forming in his wake, not wild and chaotic, but stable, directional, like scars left behind by something forcing its way through reality. Navigators reported routes going dark not because of turbulence, but because the warp itself seemed unwilling to flow through certain regions anymore. The galaxy was bending around his path, not in submission, but in avoidance. Inquisitorial conclaves convened in secrecy, their debates heated and desperate. Exterminatus was authorized on multiple worlds already lost, not as a strategic necessity, but as an act of denial. If nothing remained, then at least he could not take it. The logic was flawed, and they knew it. Khârn did not conquer, he passed through. Dead worlds did not slow him, they only marked where he had been. As the casualty projections climbed beyond calculation, a single terrifying question began to surface in the darkest corners of Imperial thought. Not how to stop him, not how to kill him, but whether stopping him was even possible without destroying everything else in the process. Because this was no longer a campaign. This was momentum, and Khârn the Betrayer had found a direction.
When Khârn arrived, the Imperium believed it still had champions capable of halting him. Strike forces of space marines, reinforced with centuries of combat experience and the finest training, descended upon his trail with confidence, confident in their chapter discipline and the sanctity of their oaths. But Khârn did not wait. He did not meet them in open battle. He was already there, moving through the ruins of cities, across cratered plains and shattered manufactorums, his chain blades swinging in deliberate rhythm. Entire squads vanished before their bolters could even roar, sergeants decapitated mid-command, champions of the chapters ripped from their ranks in moments of disbelief. Blood did not stain the ground, it streamed like rivers, filling trench-like streets, flooding the hearts of survivors with unnameable terror. Veteran Astartes, those who had faced daemons, tyrants, and plague, hesitated only briefly and died for it. The horror of watching brothers fall without opportunity to strike back shattered morale faster than the battlefield could. Fear became viral. Panic spread even among those trained not to feel it. Within hours, entire contingents of loyalist Marines either fled or were annihilated. No tactic worked, no prayer slowed him. Khârn's pace did not falter. The Imperium realized, too late, that this was not a fight he could lose, and every step he took brought the echo of inevitable doom closer. Reports reached the High Lords like a plague upon the palace. Worlds once considered bastions of imperial might lay silent and red-stained. Exterminatus proclamations were signed hastily, not to save the population, but to deny Khârn the spectacle of their suffering. Governors fled their seats in terror, nobles abandoned fortresses, and planetary defense forces were recalled only to vanish in transit. Astropaths died screaming en route to deliver warnings. The ecclesiarchy denounced the catastrophe as apocalyptic judgment, but prayers went unanswered, bells rang in empty cathedrals, and the faithful crumpled to their knees in despair. Administratum clerks, hardened to decades of inefficiency, stared dumbfounded at casualty numbers that made no sense, while the Mechanicum debated whether to sanction excommunications or reinforce impossible fleets. Fear became contagious, spreading across sectors and segmentum alike, infecting minds with the certainty that the galaxy's mightiest armies could not and would not stop the walking nightmare that was Khârn the Betrayer. Even the followers of the Blood God recoiled. Warbands of Khârn's champions, eager to witness the ultimate slaughter, arrived only to find themselves butchered with efficiency that surpassed mortal comprehension. Demons cursed him for failing to kneel, cultists begged for his favor, and even the warp itself seemed to resist him. Khârn did not fight for their approval. He did not carve sigils of worship. He killed because movement was necessity, because stillness meant confronting grief too profound to bear. Khârn himself observed quietly from the warp, a silent judge of a son who had exceeded even his expectations in terrifying independence. Champions of chaos fell first, then their warbands, and finally even those who believed themselves untouchable realized that Khârn acknowledged only one hierarchy, the one dictated by relentless motion through blood and iron, leaving all else broken in his wake. In rare, fleeting moments between slaughter, Khârn glimpsed visions of Angron, not the monstrous Primarch of history, but a version untouched by chains, unbroken, free. He saw the brother he had followed, the father he had served, the friend he had loved in that impossible way men of war love. These echoes shattered him briefly, twisting rage into grief, sorrow into unbearable clarity. The massacre became an act of penance, each swing of Gorechild a reminder of what had been lost, what could never be regained. Khârn's fury was no longer merely rage, it was mourning, disciplined and eternal. Worlds were sacrificed, not for conquest, but for remembrance, each death a ghostly tribute to the agony he had inherited and carried alone.
Khârn arrived at a shrine world at the heart of the Segmentum, a world steeped in faith and reverence. Millions prayed as the skies darkened with the shadow of his approach. Golden spires melted under his presence, stained with the blood of priests and pilgrims alike. He did not fight them, he moved through them, his blade carving precision among chaos. Statues of saints and emperors crumbled beneath blows that seemed to hum with psychic inevitability. He paused only briefly before the emperor's own image, smashing it with a strength and intent that shook the very cathedral floor. Then he walked on, leaving worshippers screaming in terror and silence alike, proving that nothing, sacred or profane, could impede his path. All attempts failed. Assassins were crushed before their strikes could land. Titans and dreadnoughts collapsed under relentless assault. Even the most disciplined chapters faltered in coordinated engagement. The galaxy realized a chilling truth. Halting Khârn might require forces so immense that stopping him could destroy everything else in the process. Speculation reached the High Lords and secret councils. Only Angron himself, or the Emperor wielding his full might, could conceivably halt the betrayer, and even then the cost would be unimaginable. The terror of that impossibility spread faster than news of the massacres themselves. For the first time, the Imperium confronted a threat for which no doctrine, no fleet, no prayer, and no heroism could provide a solution. Khârn did not linger. Worlds fell silent in his wake. Armies waited too long to engage. Statues were shattered, prayers unanswered. He walked across the galaxy as though it were a board of pawns, yet none of it slowed him. When his presence faded, what remained was not hope, not despair, not even chaos in the usual sense. It was quiet, a terrible, endless quiet. The Imperium trembled, paralyzed, unable to act, unable to comprehend the scope of the loss. And the thought that lingered longer than any scream, longer than any corpse, was the knowledge that Khârn's path had no end. He was not coming for Terra, he was coming for everything, and there was no one left to stop him. The galaxy waited, breathless, knowing that the sound of inevitability was already walking among the stars.